Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Pirate Therapist podcast. I am Lee Perry. I am your host. I am the Pirate Therapist. Today, kind of struggle a bit with everything that's been going on in the news politically and in those areas of life. And a lot has been going on. And so I kind of wanted to talk based on what I've seen in the news, what I've seen in people's reactions, more importantly, how people are responding to things. And I wanted to talk about sympathy, empathy, and compassion. When you see a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, even a stranger, when you see them going through something tough, do you ever wonder, should I listen? Should I share my own experience? Should I just jump in and help, or should I just move on and let them deal with it? Well, this is where empathy and sympathy and compassion come in. Three words. Quite often they're used interchangeably, but they are different. So let's talk about that for a second. What is sympathy? Sympathy is feeling for someone. You see they're in a sad situation, you see that something is going on, and you're like, oh, I'm sorry you're struggling with this. I'm sorry you're going through this. Empathy is where you relate to that person, where you try and put yourself in their shoes, where you've been through something which will allow you to understand at a deeper level what they're going through. And it allows you to put yourself in their shoes and see better from their perspective. Compassion is going one step further. Now, I looked up the definition of compassion because I was curious what the dictionary definition was. I did this a while ago, and I really liked the second definition. You know how they have multiple meanings sometimes. Well, the second definition in what I looked up was the one that I really liked. And the definition that I liked said, compassion is the desire to remove someone's pain. It goes a little beyond that even. There's an action involved. Compassion is attempting to remove someone's pain. It's wanting to remove someone's pain. Say a coworker loses a loved one. Sympathy would be sending a condolence card. Empathy would be sitting with them, listening, acknowledging their grief. We've all experienced loss in some form or another, and you sitting with them is empathy. Now, compassion would be taking that empathy and going another step. It would be maybe organizing meals so they don't have to worry about food, or maybe covering some of their responsibilities at work so they can focus more on getting over what they're struggling with, allowing them to take time off so they can deal with the loss. These things, it is compassion to help people in this way. If a child falls off a bike, sympathy says, you poor thing. Empathy is you remembering how much it hurts, because I'm sure most of us have fallen off a bike at one point or another, and comforting them. Compassion would be cleaning the scrape, putting on a Band-Aid, and staying with them until they feel better. Why does the distinction matter between these three? Sympathy can sometimes create a distance, as in, I show sympathy, I feel bad for you, but I am not part of this. I am not in this situation. And so it creates that distance. Empathy builds connection, but can become overwhelming if you engage too much. You can kind of take it on yourself and allow yourself to get overwhelmed. Compassion is where empathy turns into action, and it creates a change and relief. What we want is balance, and you'll hear me say that a lot. We always need balance. Too much empathy without boundaries creates burnout. Too much sympathy without depth just enforces disconnection. Compassion is the healthiest balance of empathy and action, and it creates that place where we both feel for them, but we're also doing what we can to help them feel better, to do better. When someone shares pain, pause and ask yourself, am I being sympathetic, empathetic, or compassionate right now? Practice listening more than fixing. Ask yourself, what can I do in this moment that would be helpful? Now, sometimes that will seem like you're trying to fix, but sometimes what is helpful is just sitting with them. It's not fixing, it's just sitting with them and being with them. Sometimes they need someone to worry about dinner so they don't have to. Just ask yourself, what can actually help this person in this moment? Small acts of compassion, show them frequently. Send a text, a meal, a helping hand. It doesn't have to be huge. You don't need to pay off their house. You don't need to buy off or pay off their car. Just do something that you think in that moment would be helpful to them. Think of someone in your life who could use not just sympathy, but empathy and compassion. What's one small action that you can take this week to show them that they're not alone? Isn't that what we all want? At some level, isn't that what we all want? We all want to not feel alone. We want to feel like we're part of a community, like we belong. But let's talk about the impact of social media on our ability to show empathy and compassion. There are some positives. Exposure to diverse stories. Social media gives us windows into the lives that we would never encounter otherwise. Seeing posts about struggles, illness, injustice, natural disasters can expand perspective and spark compassion. Shared communities. Online support groups help people feel understood, like for grief or chronic illness, parenting challenges. There's a lot of different groups you can get into on social media that share ideas on how to overcome particular struggles. I know there's a lot of parenting groups. Quick mobilization for help, crowdfunding, awareness campaigns, community calls to action. They allow compassion to turn into direct aid. How fast are people able to mobilize when there's a natural disaster? And people will, again, perhaps create a group on social media that says, hey, let's get together, let's organize this, and let's go help these people that have gone through this disaster. An example, again, would be if there's a natural disaster, flooding, storms, people are put out of home, we can donate medical, we can donate money, we can donate food, we can go help somebody dig out. I know during hurricanes, people will rally and they'll come together and they will clear roadways of trees and other debris, and they come together to try and help. Now, let's talk a little bit about the negative impacts of social media on empathy and compassion. It creates desensitization and compassion fatigue. Constant exposure to suffering, wars, tragedies, crises, they can numb us. Instead of feeling moved, people may feel the need to scroll past because the volume of need is so great and overwhelming. And the news media doesn't help. They catastrophize, they create issues and make them so much bigger than they perhaps are because they want those views. They want that viewership. They want people to tune in and to pay attention to them because that's where they make their money. So they are more than willing, in my opinion, to blow things out of proportion and make them way bigger than they need to be. But on our end, that can be a lot. But that's also what makes us tune in, and that's what they're looking for. It can create shallow reactions. Hitting like on a post may feel like you're showing empathy, but it often stops short of any kind of empathy or compassion, and there's no action. It makes us feel like we're doing something without actually doing anything. You know, how often do you see people type in thoughts and prayers? They don't even say, I'm putting you in my thoughts and prayers. It just gets truncated down to so brief. It's just thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. Quick reactions can replace real listening, and it doesn't give any kind of tangible support. Now, echo chambers and polarization. Algorithms show us people who think like us, less empathy for the other side. It creates this division, makes us hear what we like to hear what we believe, and we just feel like, oh, well, look, everybody's on my side. Everybody thinks like I do. So anybody who doesn't think like this must be unreasonable or awful. And it creates that lack of empathy. It creates that division. Instead of broadening understanding, it creates a harder judgment and reduces compassion for those that don't agree with us. So those people that are outside of our bubble. Some of the dangers of an echo chamber are it gives you a narrowed perspective. Empathy requires us to step into someone else's shoes, to try and feel what they feel, to understand them at a very deep and personal level. In an echo chamber, the someone else is usually just a mirror of ourselves. This limits our ability to understand and care about people with different backgrounds, different struggles, and different viewpoints. It creates us versus them thinking. An echo chamber strengthens the in-group loyalty, but it increases the hostility towards the outsiders. Instead of, I don't understand them, the mindset becomes, they're wrong, they're bad, or they're dangerous. This erodes sympathy and compassion for people outside the group, even when they're suffering. It dehumanizes. When opposing perspectives are never heard directly, it's easy to reduce the other side to stereotypes and caricatures. Dehumanization makes it feel difficult to feel empathy for the other person who we will relegate into less than human or unrelatable. Makes us create, again, it creates that gap, that divide. It pushes that distance between us to a greater extent, and it decreases our compassion and our empathy for people who perhaps disagree with us. Echo chambers redirect compassion towards people only within our group, while dismissing and ignoring the pain of outsiders. For example, showing deep compassion for victims of tragedy if they align with the group's values, but minimizing or mocking the suffering of others. It reinforces biases. When beliefs are constantly affirmed, people will feel justified in withholding empathy from others. Sympathy turns conditional. I'll care about you, but only if you agree with me. That doesn't seem right, does it? Empathy, compassion, and sympathy require us to reach beyond our bubble. Echo chambers shrink our moral circle, making it harder to see humanity in those that are different from us. If we want to break the cycle, we need to seek diverse voices. We need to follow and read and listen to people outside of our perspective. I think we can all agree that if we're not, that we can all agree that we're not always right. Sometimes we are mistaken. Sometimes we have been operating on less than perfect information. We can all agree on that, right? Okay. So if that's the case, shouldn't we be open to the idea that someone else may be right? And I realize that this can be hard if we don't like the person that has that information. But if we don't listen to them, we're turning away from truth for the sake of disliking a person. Shouldn't we be after the truth regardless of the source? Shouldn't we be looking for the truth no matter what? We should practice curiosity over judgment. Ask yourself, what is their story? Put yourself in their shoes. Try and understand why they think how they think. Try and understand. We're not always going to be right. Sometimes they will be, even if they disagree with us, because we are not always right. Focus on our shared humanity. We all feel pain, joy, love. These are universal, even when our beliefs are different. We need to understand that everybody struggles at times, but everybody does the best they can, I would hope. Performative empathy. Some express empathy online mainly for social validation. Thoughts and prayers. Again, I really kind of hate that term. It's been so truncated, it's useless. It's kind of insulting, in my opinion. But this cheapens genuine compassion, and it makes it harder to trust sincerity. Reduced face-to-face practice. Empathy is strongest in person. Body language, tone, eye contact. We get an energy. We get a connection with people when we are face-to-face, when we're in the same room, when we are communicating face-to-face. We get a lot. We get body language. We get again an energy that we don't get over video, that we don't get in any other way. We get eye contact. There's a tone. There's just an energy that we get in person. And if we reduce that face to face, it creates that divide and makes it easier for us to create the us versus them mentality. When we rely or over rely on digital interactions, this may weaken our ability to read emotions and respond compassionately to people when we're offline. How many times have you seen people who's so accustomed to communicating via phone or computer that they can be sitting right next to a whole lot of people and everybody's staring down at their phone and they're just texting each other, even though they're sitting right next to each other? That's not going to get you that energy I was talking about. That's removing that personal context from a situation when it's perfectly viable right there. They're sitting right next to you. I hear stories about people who sit down to dinner and they all text each other at the table. He, little inside joke, whatever, but they're not talking. That decreases that personal connection. The emotional impacts, it creates a heightened sense of anxiety and fear. The social media that we get, it can create a larger, to a larger extent, anxiety. It can spread a lot of false details. People are quick to jump to judgment and they will spread it And when you go into those social media rooms, especially an echo chamber, if someone says something that they are assuming is correct, it will be repeated as though it were truth. And it can create a lot of anxiety and fear. It can create a lot of false narrative, and it can drive the truth further away, but engage more people inside of your echo chamber to get involved. But it creates that division. It creates that animosity towards someone who is not part of your group, and it makes us feel unsafe. It can create confusion and overwhelm with so many contradictory accounts. I think this week there's been a lot of contradictory accounts of what happened. I'm not going to say what it is. I don't want to make that part of this discussion. But there's been a lot of different narratives that have been published, and they are very biased on both sides of the fence. And all it does is create that division. When people reacted to the events this week, and they reacted with no compassion, no empathy, and they were laughing and they were happy about this awful incident, the other side responded by saying, well, we're going to dox you. We're going to call your job. We're going to get you fired. And they've been doing it. Explain to me how this is helpful. Explain to me where the compassion, the empathy, where is this? All we're doing is creating further division. We are creating more animosity instead of creating unity, instead of working with each other and showing compassion and concern and trying to lift people out of their pain. Anyway, going back to the social media, it can create uncertainty. It creates stress. It creates a huge sense of helplessness. It causes us to feel emotional numbing. Repeated exposure to violent imagery and misinformation can desensitize people. Instead of fostering empathy, it can create an emotional fatigue or shutdown where we become numb and will scroll past, or we will become enraged and further that divide and be more upset and more angry at the other side. We have to understand that this misinformation, when it's out there, it sticks. Early false reports leave a lasting impression, even after corrections come out. Someone says this is the way, even if it's not, and it's corrected down the road, a lot of people are still going to get stuck on that first news report that was let out prematurely. People will continue believing and repeating incorrect narratives, especially if it meets or aligns with their echo chamber. It erodes trust. Conflicting stories make people distrust news sources, authorities, even friends who share updates. Over time, this can make people skeptical of all information, even credible sources. It can polarize that divide again. False narratives will often weaponize political, deepening the us versus them thinking. This can reduce compassion by framing victims or groups as enemies instead of people that are suffering. The social and relational impacts, it creates divisions and arguments. Debates over what really happened can strain relationships online and offline. Compassion for victims may get lost in fighting about ideology. It reduces empathy for actual victims. Focus shifts from those directly harmed to abstract blame, conspiracy theories, or political battles. The human suffering becomes a background noise to the drama of misinformation. False narratives don't just distort facts, they distort emotions. They hijack people's natural empathy, redirecting it into fear, anger, and division instead of compassion for those that are affected. So let's talk about some healthy ways to cope. Pause before sharing something on social media. Ask yourself, is this verified by a credible source? Just because we like what we hear or it aligns with our thinking does not mean it's accurate. And before we go pushing a narrative, we should probably make sure the source is credible. Make sure that it is verified before we push that. We should limit our doom scrolling, getting constant updates. And I am guilty of this too. I have done this. But if we can step away from that once in a while, take a break from that overwhelming inundation of updates and new theories and all of that, if we can just step away, it will help us to reduce that anxiety, that fear. It will help us to calm ourselves and think more rationally. It will allow us to become more empathetic and more compassionate. We need to refocus on humanity, center on the people directly impacted, not the noise around the event. We need to, again, fact check, Go back. Don't trust somebody else to do your fact checking. Look at the sources. And is there a secondary source that says this is accurate? If you don't know of a secondary source saying that this is accurate, maybe hold off on posting that until the secondary source comes along and verifies that. Just things we can do to help reduce misinformation. So I know today's going to be a little short, and I apologize, but I want to talk about why in person contact strengthens sympathy, empathy, and compassion. The nonverbal cues, they bring depth to our communication. Facial expressions, body language, eye contact, tone of voice, they all carry meaning that words alone do not. Seeing tears in someone's eyes or hearing their voice crack builds empathy far more than reading a text or a post ever would. Neuroscience shows us that when we're physically present, our brains will often mirror emotions of the others. Sitting with someone in pain makes us feel their pain more vividly, which can inspire compassion. It reduces misunderstanding. Personal contact we communicate better. Online short messages can be misinterpreted. Face to face is harder to misunderstand. We can still misunderstand, but it's harder to misunderstand face to face than it is on a text, on even a phone call or an email. In person, we can clarify. We can respond. We can ask clarifying questions in real time. We can adjust how we show we care. We lead by doing this, we lead to more authentic sympathy, empathy, and it helps us understand better how to show compassion, how to take that action step and move forward. Our physical presence communicates care. Sometimes compassion doesn't need words. Just being physically present is itself an act of support. Sometimes we just don't want to be alone. We don't want to talk. We just don't want to be alone. A hand on the shoulder, a hug, or just sitting together in silence conveys this. You're not alone. I am here for you. It deepens bonds over time. Repeated in-person experiences builds trust, intimacy, and shared memories. These connections create a stronger foundation for long-term empathy and compassion because we feel invested in each other's well-being. It counters the online mask. How many of us know of someone who is very different online than they are in person? People online wear this mask. They feel safer to be aggressive. They feel safer to shout down the opposing side because when it's online, there's a distance there. And people are willing to be more aggressive and less compassionate because they don't have to feel that pain that the other side is feeling. They don't have to understand them. They can just lash out their own angst, their own anxiety, their own fear, and they can push other people away because they don't have to feel what that other person is feeling. So being in person is much better at communicating and helping you show that empathy and compassion. In person, people are more complex in person. They're vulnerable, they're real, and it makes it easier for us to feel genuine empathy and compassion. Digital contact keeps us connected, but in-person contact makes us human to each other. Sympathy may start with awareness, but empathy and compassion thrive best in face-to-face presence. The practical takeaways for today, I hope you can get. Make a space for in-person check-ins with your friends and family, even brief ones. Just showing up at their house to say, hey, I haven't seen you in a little while. I want to make sure you're okay. That will mean a lot to a person, especially if they need that, but they've been afraid to reach out. When someone is hurting, if possible, show up. Again, physically, you may not know they're hurting, but if you see something is wrong, something they haven't been around, they've pulled away, show up physically rather than sending a text and say, are you okay? These small interactions count. Chatting with a neighbor, sharing a meal, volunteering, all of these moments strengthen our capacity for care. Online, we can say, I'm sorry you're going through this. In person, we sit down beside someone, we hear that tremble in their voice, and we can bring them a cup of tea. We can show them, do something for them, show them that we care. That's the difference. Sympathy through words is good, but empathy through presence is better. Compassion is empathy plus action, and that's the best. So I thank you all for joining me today. I hope we will all take what we can from today's episode, and we will do our best to move forward to try and show more sympathy, more empathy, and compassion. Sympathy, if nothing else. Empathy and compassion are by far the best. We want to feel what they feel. We don't want to own it, but we want to understand the pain they're in and then show them compassion to help them remove from that pain. We want to have them feel less pain. We want to feel that connection. We want to build that bridge between people. Stop dividing, stop pushing each other away. People are valuable. Everybody has something to offer. Stop pushing people away. Allow that connection to happen. Log off. Go spend some time with the people you care about. Go show some compassion for people that mean something to you. Go show some compassion for people that don't mean anything to you because they should. Open yourself up to the possibility of understanding. Go talk to somebody whose views are different to see if you are wrong, to see if maybe they have a point. Odds that they're wrong are probably just as high as the odds that you're wrong. But maybe if you put your two perspectives together, you'll find out that both of you have improved your perspective and maybe changed a little. And now you're both more correct than you were before. But we have to communicate to be able to do this. So for today, I want you all to know that you matter, that you are important. It doesn't matter what's going on in the news, you do matter. And we need to show compassion for each other. Stop with the hate, stop with the anger and the divisiveness. Let's build some bridges. Let's create something that helps us do better as a whole. Don't let the news media create that divide. They count on that to sell their advertising. That's where they make their money. They catastrophize everything to make it awful, and that gets you emotional and less rational. Care about each other. People matter. I hope you all have a wonderful week. I will talk to you next week on my next episode. Until then, take care.